Hey everyone, and welcome to these examples of how to analyze a Blitz game. And I made some little changes. You might have heard that I talked about 6 games I played myself, but right here I have 3 different games that I show you how to analyze for different levels. So we have one game that is roughly 1000 level. We have a second game that is roughly 2000 level. And we have a third game that was from myself. Let's put that back to the start. And then I show you how to analyze on GM level. So like this, you can get a little bit of a feeling which level, how much should you annotate, what can you just leave out. Let's start with the game on 1000 rating level. As you see here, it's 1175, 1217, close enough. So we go e4, d5, takes, knight c3, queen a5. And now a friend of mine, is actually a friend that has never studied chess but just plays some games, played d3 here. So this is a point where I would say, d3, it's not really amazing to block that bishop. So the only note I would say, next time play d4 and you can develop more easy and in a better way. That's it for the opening part. Then we move on. There's knight f6, bishop d2, all logical moves. Obviously, there are some moves that weren't best according to the engine, but we don't care about that, okay? Really, especially on this level, you just have to think, okay, I play a Blitz game. I cannot be perfect. If I need to analyze every single move, what I would do better, you just overload yourself. So here we stick to the most important things. Everything is fine. White is getting their pieces into play. We have the same amount of pawns, and right here we snatch a pawn, h4, knight f4, e5, knight to h3, and knight to d4. And this is the first moment where I would add an analysis, because in the game white played rook c1 and got hit by knight e2 check, king h1, knight takes c1. Oops, we lost an exchange. And if you check right here, you can just switch on the engine. We see that white is much better, it's +1. But once we play rook a c1, black is much better, -2. So we lost 3 points in one single move. We lost an exchange. That's probably a moment we should think about. So white misses a tactic from the opponent. And funnily enough, also misses a tactic for themselves. Because if you play king h1 here, that pawn on c2 that they try to defend is actually not hanging, because rook a c1 and the knight will fall. So that's a very important moment in that game where there is a big swing from white is much better to white is suddenly close to being lost. So we can continue this game. Again, not all moves were perfect, but it's fine. White is much worse, but not totally busted. And here white plays g3. And this is not a one-move blunder, so it's something I would say in between that I would leave up to your own feeling of the game. Because g3 after takes rook to the h file, we cannot move the knight anymore because h2 will be checkmate. Rook takes h2 will be checkmate. So g3 is a mistake. It's a big mistake giving away the game. It was already lost though, so I note it when I see it with students, but it's not something I go in depth, because there are many moves, but all the moves are actually white is much worse or even objectively lost. Okay, so this is something we can still note. Okay, opponent's resource we missed. When we move on, we get into this endgame, and here, this is a big problem I see with many people. They will say, okay, this was completely lost, let's just move to the next one. But wait. Take the time to shortly go through that game, because let's look here. We just push our pawns. I mean, we still have some chances, right? Okay, sadly lost the h pawn, g4 giving away the g pawn as well. But usually there are still chances. And now comes this interesting move c5. King takes c5, and in this moment, after this bad move, king takes c5, white has a way to equalize. So we need to note that moment. White misses the very simple rook f5, and we get back the queen. Isn't that beautiful? Boom. And actually, black only has one way to draw that position. He shouldn't take on f5, shouldn't move anywhere with the king but king d4 and then take with the pawn. And this endgame is objectively speaking a draw. So black only had one single choice to actually draw that game. So in a practical sense, missing rook f5 is nearly giving away a full point, because I highly doubt that black would have found the right way. So we need to make sure, even if we're totally busted, to go through the end of the game and check with the engine. And I usually do that very quickly, right? You can just go here again. Let's say here we are completely lost. You switch on the engine and now you just click through and you just see up here if there is any big change. And we can try this out. The engine is not loading. Okay, -4, -5, who cares? It's the same. -6, -6, minus. This is, everything is the same. But when you click through, suddenly you will realize, oops, what? White is better or equal? Okay, that's a move I missed. That's something bad. We need to check rook f5. We need to find that next time. And that's how you analyze a game on 1000 level. Let's move on to the 2000 level, where we go a little bit deeper in all aspects of the game. So let's get back. e4, e6, d4, b6. Oh, interesting. Knight c3, knight f3. Now, there are many ways to play against this, but if you see, okay, you are just much better, knight f6, queen e2, protecting this pawn because this knight is pinned. So everything is good. No need to go too deep in this opening. If you check, well, we're slightly better, but it's a logical way to play. And here we get the bishop pair. And the first moment I would note is this moment after queen to e7, where I would definitely play different, because if we switch on the engine again, there is this move e5, which is just very logical and very strong. Why? Because this knight has a hard time. Engine says best move is knight g8, but then, okay, we made e5, we made the knight jump back, that's very good. And if knight d5, there are many different ways. You can play c4 straight away, because this knight will get nearly trapped, needs to go to a4. You can also play bishop d2 and c4 next move. Look at this knight. It's nearly lost already, so black should play the queen away and then knight to e7, and this is just a very, very good position. So if I were in their shoes next time, I would just note e5, that's what I have to play. Okay, let's move on. We played bishop g5, h6, takes. And now there was a move that surprised me a lot, and I would say that's something we should note on 2000 level. It was king to d2. Okay, the king could castle, but white decides to put the king on d2. And that's just simply plain bad. The king will be weak in the center, and on the king side it wasn't weak. Maybe white was too scared of this g line, this open g file, but the open g file doesn't do much. We can, in worst case, even play g3, but also just like, how many moves will it take for black to really put those rooks on the g file? So castle was much better. Also, if you see the evaluation, white is quite a bit better, and after king d2 quite a bit worse. So this is something, if it's a strong, like, committal move like king d2 and you just go completely wrong, something to note. Now let's see. White tries to attack, tries to get the rooks over as quickly as possible. Note that the king on g1, with the king on g1, this position would be lovely for white. But the king on d2 can get weak. So here we have some moves. Again, nothing that changes the evaluation too much. For the first time, we realize, oh, the king on d2 really isn't as good as we thought. And black snatches this pawn, queen c6, and king to b8. And right here, there is a big, big moment in that game, because white has a very strong move, but plays a move that is nearly lost. So white continues with rook b3, but after knight c4, knight d3, queen d7, we have to exchange the queens, and that's not really great. We are just a pawn down, not what we wanted. Instead, white would have had the move queen to a4, sacrificing this rook on b1, and then giving a check, and another check, and another check, and another check, and taking the queen and now taking the knight. So this was a forced line. This is a tough forced line to see. But once you spot that even, for example, playing queen a4 and then taking and then just taking the knight on b1 is much better than we played in the game. This is just, engine says even white has better chances, right? Then we need to spot at least this continuation. Because after rook b3, knight c4, there's really basically no counterplay anymore for the pawn and queen d7, and we gotta exchange the queens, not what we wanted. And here we can continue. And there was one moment I would still note white is worse, but white still has some chances. And right here, white plays king to f2, allowing this knight suddenly jumping in, playing knight to d2, then knight to e4, then you can grab c3, then d4 gets weak. So a very unnecessary move. Again, if you are 1000 level, king to f2, we don't even want to think about it. But once you start being on roughly 2000 level, close to that, it's better to also spot some moves like that, because after playing h4, it's actually not that clear. Yeah, you have this a pawn that is very good, but black also has these doubled f pawns, and that's why you have a passer on your own. You can still fight on, but after king f2, there's really not much to do anymore. And as you will see, white just lost basically without the fight, giving up all the pawns, and now we are just completely busted. So this would be like the last moment, okay, king f2. So in this case, with a 2000 level, we have this opening improvement. We have a big mistake in rook in king d2. We have a big mistake in rook to b3. And we have one last mistake in king to f2. And that's it. That's how you analyze it on 2000 level. And now for those who are curious, I'll just show how I analyze my own games. You will see that there is also not so much annotation, especially in a blitz game. So let's flip the board because I was playing black right here. And what I would do is write what I remembered. So here I remember knight to f3, a6, bishop c4, and then b5. And that's why on bishop c4 I played a6, hoping for knight to f3, and then I can play the exact same way. But my opponent plays bishop to b3, and here is the first change I would do. This is, again, this is GM level. This is, I want to as precise as possible. So I just noted for myself b5, what I would do next time. Because the problem is knight f3 loses a piece, so that's not what they should do. And we get here a better version of the game. So we can continue with the game. Nothing big has happened, but the only difference is that right here I cannot play b5 because the knight will take and the file is already open. So that was the difference. Now I have to play with b6, a little bit more passive. Again, that's GM level. So here, a lot of normal moves. And we get to a point where I make a mistake for my level because I play h5 because I'm scared of actually playing castle. But if you check here, castle is actually no problem at all. I should have castled. Bishop h6, knight to e8. And that, I thought it was a problem, but that's actually pretty nice for black. We will just play bishop f6, and at some point this knight will get out via c7. So right here, I noted that because h5, really not an amazing move, especially because I just was scared of castling, so good to remember for myself. And right here, we have again actually the chance that I can play short castle, but I continue my mistake by just playing long castle. And here, if you check, black is just very, very bad. +1, more than +1 with nearly every move. So that was a big misevaluation. Oh, sorry. Big misevaluation on my part. So for my level, I note that for myself. White plays b4, b5. It's interesting that they sacrifice a piece. I noticed that that's unnecessary. They shouldn't have done that. But let's focus on my own moves. We get to this position, and here I get the feeling that, okay, that sacrifice was bad. and I play a tactical continuation that actually was a trick from my opponent. I just snatched that pawn, attacking the queen, attacking the bishop, seems very good. Queen to e3, I take a bishop, thank you very much, I'm 2 pieces up. But after queen b6, I have no way to stop the checkmate unless for giving a lot of material. Because there's just queen to c7 coming, it's checkmate. And if I, for example, try to defend like this, rook a8 is a checkmate as well. So that was a big, big miss from my part. I just gave away the game after queen c5. Black takes the queen, gets 1 piece back, and I was completely busted. We can also go through the end of the game. That's what I do all the time. But there was no mercy from my opponent. I just gave away all the pieces, played rook h6, I don't know why, and resigned. So that wasn't good. So here in that game, knight to e4 was a huge problem. And what I would do is to check. And you see that initially the computer said knight e4 was super good. But no, knight e4 was very bad. And I'll just see, oh, king d7, what an idea. I run away with my king and then my piece up. Now I'm threatening knight to e4. If white has to play f3, look at this queen suddenly. Such a badly placed queen to attack anything. So here I can just, for example, exchange the rooks. And now I'm really a piece up just for 1 pawn. So that is completely winning. Should have found that on my level. So on Grandmaster level, what I'm doing, again, just noting little differences in the opening right here. Then I made a mistake because I couldn't evaluate right away if I should castle or not. I castled long, which was a bad move. And then most importantly, I missed a tactical sequence, played knight takes e4, too confident maybe, and didn't spot what white was trying to do with queen b6, and that's what lost me the game. Notice that I give it 2 question marks because I go from completely winning to absolutely losing, which is horrendous, right? That's the worst kind of moves you can do. So that's why I give myself 2 question marks. And that's how I analyze games for myself. But also previously you saw how you can analyze games on 1000 level and on 2000 level. I really hope that helped you understand how you can do those blitz analysis. If you have any questions, as always, let me know in the Discord channel, and see you in the next video.